All right, so let's do another round. Continuation. So, part two of this rant, this don't mess with symbols that you don't understand, and go ahead and get an education so you can understand them. So, really, kind of the point of it all, it's like, how do I present information so I can then say what I want to say? And it's like I have to build up a foundation, a level of understanding, so then I can make the statement. Um, and it's eluding me. Like I had it, but then I explained that and lost it for a bit. But oh yes, the whole point is the tarot is a system, but it's a language system. And so when you start changing the vocabulary, you're not going to get the correct message. And that system is, factual and linear. A square is a square, a triangle is a triangle. The color red is a color red. That's, and whatever we put with it. But then there's also the experiential level of the system, the mystical. And that can't exactly be spelled out to you. So you have to. So what we see online is people who are abusing the language system and maybe don't have a full relationship. So subject, object, subjectivity, objectivity, but there's this other level, and it's the relationship. You have to have a relationship. That was fucking awesome. Uh, the spirit like left my room in this really cool cloud whoosh sensation. And so I love it because that's kind of what we're also going to talk about. Uh, so a lot of people believe if you're psychic, grab a deck of cards and it's going to develop your abilities. Or so you're psychic, now you need cards. And I'm like, no, you don't need the tarot to be an excellent psychic. And if you're not going to, I would say go use Oracle deck. If you just want to like read energies on cards. So I remember when I was starting out professionally reading cards, and this one reader was like, "Oh, I just use the cards as a focus," and and then she tried to get all mystical, like you got to see deeper and feel the energy in the cards. I'm like, "Okay, that's great." Um, and yes, that can be true. And then, but it's like if you really take the time to learn the language of tarot, then it's like learning to play the piano. You can kind of play by ear and take a lifetime to learn to play by ear, and and maybe you'll play some songs, but if you actually go ahead and learn how to read music and how to write your own music, then you can also take that same talent of kind of playing by ear, but then also know what you're doing and write concerts and write full musical concertos, and you can be a Beethoven, you can be a Prince, like you can become a master musician. And so it's like you're kind of, if you don't really want to learn tarot and you're just going to be a psychic for money and a fortune teller for money, you're basically reading with your hands tied behind your back and one eye closed. This is what you're doing. You're going, okay, I'm reading tarot. This is what it is, and I feel like tarot's limited, And it's like, and I'm like, learn, learn, actually learn the symbols. And that means you'd have to be interested in the occult teachings of Western mystery, which is astrology, which is Kabbalah, which is ritual magic, and numerology, and beyond. Um, to if you want to take your cards to the maximum. But at that level, you're like, but well, I could give an astrology reading. Yeah. Or I could just spend the rest of my life studying the Kabbalah, screw readings and people. Then you realize, so it's like when you start to peel back the layers of tarot, you realize, oh, it's not really for fortune telling. And it's not exactly for psychic development. No. If you're going to do the occult, you already are good at fortune telling, predictive arts, but or not. It's not even required, not necessary. But what you are is somewhat intuitive psychic, and you have to get to that intuitive psychic level to really be let into the upper mysteries, the greater arcana. And but I can talk about it and we can like think about it, but you have to get there to, I can talk about the desert, but until you're actually there, I mean, you can read, you can study, you can watch all these videos, study pictures, you can read about it, but until your feet are actually in the Sahara Desert in the afternoon, or even at night, you don't understand the desert. And this same lecture I could give to myself on so many subjects, and even within those subjects. So it's like there's like worlds within worlds. It's like a fractal. It's like your mind is going to be constantly blown. And that's the type of open mindedness you need to excel and to get electrified, uh, to be hanging out in the occult. So people will like grab a deck of cards. There's a little booklet inside that gives you general predictive how to use. And there's a lot of really bad books out there on how to read cards. But that's enough to start a YouTube channel and make some money being a fortune teller, playing tricks. And you can weave stories together and feed them to your clients. And you can use the pictures to sell a story to yourself and your client. And you're a mediocre psychic. What is happening? You're The archetypal patterns are coming up. And there's only so many keys on the keyboard. So we recognize them and go, wow, you're intuitive. Yeah, I'm psychic. No. You just hit an archetypal key. You're spelling out in a very crude way the story. So we can both write Little Red Riding Hood. And a kid could write Little Red Riding Hood and we would understand it. We'd be like, oh, a person with a red coat going to visit grandma, wolf, a trick, a disguise, bad wolf. And then we go, wow, you're psychic. Yeah, I do have a grandma. And I am planning to go to her house. And then you get someone who is a really good writer, who really so they have more pieces of the puzzle. So when we look at, like there's artists that draw photorealistic. What are they doing? They're really taking their time they've trained themselves to get all those details and spell them out on the medium that they're using, to draw them out in detail to so much that it fools our eyes and our brains and we think it's a photo. We think it's three-dimensional. We think it's a real spider. And they've spent a time, they learned how to communicate that. So now we get someone who's really worked with the cards for 30 years. They're living it, they're eating it, they're drinking it. Now when they tell their story to you about Little Red Riding Hood, it's more detailed. They're like, it's like, grandma lives in Montana And Little Red Riding Hood lives a block and a half away. There's wolves in Montana, and it's in the fall. She's gonna wear that Patagonia wool uh, coat that arrived to her. They bought it on Amazon. It arrived, and she's wearing it to Grandma's house. Grandma has a little bit of Alzheimer's and dementia, so she has to wear the red coat to remind Grandma that it's Little Red Riding Hood. And Little Red Riding Hood doesn't want to reveal her full name, so this story will be going under the alias of Little Red Riding Hood, but it's enough for Grandma to recognize her and let her in the house. Little Red Riding Hood baked her favorite foods that were obviously low on the glycemic index and were gluten free because Grandma has celiacs. It's getting late. The wolves were coming out. There was some cheese, some meat, and the local wolves were curious. And not to mention, back at home, before Little Red Riding Hood left to go to Grandma's house, she actually has a dog. And that dog was in heat and was actually rubbing up all against Little Red Riding Hood's legs. Whoa, so no wonder why the wolves were after Little Red Riding Hood. It wasn't the food, it wasn't that she was a girl, it wasn't that she was going to Grandma's house, it was that there were pheromones of a dog in heat, and so the wolves were curious. They were misled by their noses, kind of, but curious. And so they followed her. Wasn't that a more interesting story? Didn't we get a lot more details? Yeah. So it's like when you learn the language and you get more accurate details, it creates more believability. We pull and so so it's like the devil is in the details. It's like so I would suggest taking a good 5-10 years with the cards um to if you want to really understand cards. If you want to just do fortune tell readings, then I would say go for it. I'm not gonna ever train you to be a fortune teller. Um, so I've been in the occult for a long time, and so let's just now kind of like change subjects and move on. How could the deck of cards be the Book of Thoth? How could this be the whole codex of the mystery school teachings supposedly taught in Egypt? Does it really matter about the mystical story, the legend, the myth? No. How could there be, how could I open up the deck and have it be more than just symbols and pictures and numbers, something to analyze and mathematically equate? The king's skull, the queen's skull, the knights, the pages, the royal court cards, the higher arcana, the greater mysteries, and the lower arcana, the lower mysteries. And how does it ever get out of the tree of life and the 10 spheres and the 22 paths? You have to have access into the planes and or slash your imagination. We'll start there. We'll keep it safe. And so, just like in the first episode, I dreamed that I was in a convention with mediums and psychics and spirits. And I dreamed I had a deck of cards, and it was a death deck. And then the next day, the manifestation or the alignment of the dimensions was someone who had those energies. So like all day I wasn't thinking about it. I had no idea that after work this person was going to text me and send a message and an image of his tarot spread, and it was going to be the same type of deck I use, with my significator card in the center, and he's asking me about it. So on some level, we can call that the astral, dreams, intuition, intentions, different levels and planes. There was something going on. There is information, and I had enough awareness to pick up a little bit of it from my dreams and have it make an impression on my conscious mind to show up as a memory of an event from dreams. And this person had enough intuition so there were forces that were larger than us at play, manipulating two people to converge for a reading. That so those events, you could say, happened in the astral. And my only level of awareness was the dream, the snippets of dream I remembered, and then the rest gone. Who knows what took place, really? Time and space, who knows? Um, but but the more you get using your intuition, the more intense it gets. Like the visions, the dreams. You have to be able to have visions and dreams to unlock the tarot. Through your visions and dreams, uh, it's another way, instead of just having it be the communication style of talking with our mouth and using our five senses. You're kind of going fourth and fifth dimensional or psychic. Your awareness is expanded, your vocabulary is expanded. So the images, the way you receive information, send and receive information, is greater. And so uh, I'm gonna grab a few cards. So a few days ago, I was doing my pillow meditation where I'm opening up my heart and I'm doing a large experiment that's lasted over a year now of opening up my heart through using a pillow to hug someone I care about, whether it's a tree, my pet, my boyfriend, my dad, uh, whoever I wish to hug. Kind of gets awkward. Those long hugs, you're like, okay, get off me, and you smell, right? So I decided I'd use a pillow, and I've had many spiritual experiences, and one of the most recent ones was this, the High Priestess card. She stands in between on the longest path in the Tree of Life is from the heart to the crown, and there she is in the middle of it. And literally, I got to see this type of light network that she has access to. And I saw it in my second chakra, and it lit up. And I've seen this fabric before, this type of, it's like a fabric, and it's luminescent in nature. This time I saw it where all the spaces were look like stained glass colored, like colored pieces of glass, like gems. And so I'm kind of calling it the Veil of Isis, but it's actually not exactly that. Um, but in Crowley's work, they write about that and how occultists have seen this like gossamer, crystally light network. And while I was doing my hugging meditation, I spontaneously saw it. I was connected to the web of life. And so when you work magic, you work the web. I was literally seeing in full detail the web with my mind's eye. So it's that type of access you have to gain the inner teachings of Western mystery. And that is compiled in the tarot deck. So now it's not I'm reading this card for fortune telling. It's I'm relating. So there's a relationship. I had a spiritual experience, a mystical vision through my sensory, heartfelt meditation experience that was kind of very womb like and kind of, I've had so many spiritual experiences, it's ridiculous, doing the pillow meditation, which has been the foundation of my work for like a year and a half. So you could literally consider it a spell working, a transformational alchemy spell working that I've done for a year and a half. So this wasn't like a weekend where I'm bored, let's gather some candles, sing kumbaya, make a wish on something we don't deserve, and call it a night. It wasn't a feel good ritual. So a ritual doesn't always have to take place in an altar. This ritual has been going on as a full on scientific experiment for a year and a half. And the result was this, the High Priestess card. The veil was lifted, in a sense, and yet the veil was seen. Most people can't even see the fabric. They can't even see the veil, let alone, they might have moments where it's removed and they see past the veil. But even witnessing the veil or whatever level of reality that, like the web of, it looked like the web of life to me. Everything was connected. They were fine silvery, they were like pearlescent, glowy white, rainbowy threads together, making a pattern with these gem-like reflections through the spaces, crystally brilliant. It was brilliant. It took my breath away. I was in awe. And that is living. That was a teaching. The experience was a teaching. And the closest relationship to it was the High Priestess. And now what I understand about the High Priestess card. So here I am in the not knowing. I've been doing the cult work for how long? I mean, I've had glimpses, but this was a new hello. This was a new immersion into this lesson. So yeah, how, when there was a spiritual being that manifested something, I saw the fabric and the person moving behind the screen of this fabric materializing a lost object for me. Yes. So that experience with my meditation experience, I learned more and more kind of about this card, but this dimension. And that would be considered a higher mystery. And as a high priestess, you should have access to this level. And so, and what was I doing? I was doing a heart chakra meditation. And what do I feel after doing all this? I feel energy from my crown cleanse me and go into my heart. I have so many awesome experiences. So I'm working the middle path. And so if you're versed in the language of tarot or tree of life, then you understand it's a language. So like mathematicians understand the math and they can talk that. People who study geometry can talk that section of the mathematical language. So you can learn a section, you can learn all of it. And so this is the living day-to-day experience of using the tarot in an occult way. So let's move on. So there's a lot of hype going on in the New Age world about dimensions, densities, forth, and in the scientific world saying there's 11 dimensions and blah, blah, blah. Where did they get that information? There's 11 spheres in the tree of life. Does this not show you the dimensions and the spheres? Does this not show you the matrix? And then beyond the matrix, the absolute living radiance, going from like a square world to a sphere or a round world. Doesn't this kind of show you the evolution of man? Doesn't this kind of just show you turn everything inside out to see straight? The Hangman card. The Harris lady painted this clear back in like World War II. This great cube, all this like future of technological society, androids, artificial life right there, right in front of your face. So it's relating to us in our time period now. Isn't she screaming about artificial life, androids, cloning, through a symbolic language that when you understand it? So this was staring in our face for how long? Since World War II. And she's had the vision. Doesn't of humans being trapped in a matrix, of a techno society and mad science. It's basically turning nature upside down, turning life upside down, to live forever, to be smarter than we are, to be robots, to be androids. She's having this vision. She's kind of said it in a code, or it was transmitted through her. Maybe she never even understood, and yet it reaches out, and now it makes a lot of sense. Haven't you noticed that all these card readers for pay never tell you about the wars that are happening? They never tell you about the big agenda from the elite. When it was staring at, when it was, and I don't even think it's bad. I mean, obviously it was destiny. I mean, the universe wants to experience itself in all forms. So you also have to have an open mind to, and look, like these colors are bright. So she's not saying it's the end of the world. She's not saying artificial life is bad. She's not saying cloning is bad. She's not saying artificial intelligence is bad. She's not saying being trapped in the matrix is bad or being in the matrix is bad. Look at these colors. The colors of life. It's amazing. Amazing. So we can relate to our personal experience that we're going through now with an image, build a relationship and bring it to life. This was her card for science. Occultists aren't not religious, not scientists, but like they don't have a, and look at fractals, crystalline structures, the book on water, the six, those six, water taking that hexagram formation. Doesn't that look like you're looking through a microscope? It also doesn't look like six swords stabbing across. You could say science taking a stab at religion, and maybe religion holding science in check. And so the messages that come through aren't who's having my baby, will I get rich, what is my boyfriend doing right now. When you let go of fortune telling, you can start to see the truth shining through really right in our face. Don't you think like the death of religion and the death of God is right here? With the image of Mercury, the double wanded one, the double sided one right there. This war between religion and science is not a war. The religion holds science in check, and science holds religion in check. So there's a check and balance system going here, creating something very much very beautiful. Are we looking at stars, or are we looking deep into a cell? Is this a warning against DNA splicing and DNA altering? I definitely see that as knives genetically rearranging what God made good. So you could have a whole discussion about God and science with this card. And it's a number 6. 6 is balance. So even the numbers line up, the colors line up, the symbols. That literally reminds me of looking in a telescope or a microscope, either way. That literally looks like a petri dish, and they're doing dissecting a frog. This is how you bring cards to life. This is how that you make them relevant to your everyday situation. Anyone who's taken a dissection class or looked in a microscope or a telescope can now relate it to their personal experience, to these classic images. We're gonna cut this video off. We're gonna keep playing. This is hot material, I think. Maybe I'm done. I'll take a little break.